and welcome to the Enstarz YouTube channel. My name is Jess, and today I'm here to talk to you about Free Chol Soo Lee, a feature-length documentary about the wrongful conviction and eventual vindication of the titular Chol Soo Lee. Directed by first-time directors Julie Ha and Eugene Yu, both originally investigative reporters, the film tells the story of how this Korean-American man was racially profiled and sent to the American prison system for a murder he didn't commit. The film tells the story by combining archival footage, interviews with Lee's friends and activists from the Free Chol Soo Lee movement, and voiceovers of excerpts from Lee's memoir performed by Sebastian Yoon, who had also previously served time in prison and is now an activist bringing awareness to the inhumane U.S. criminal justice system, as if the story wasn't generating enough pathos as it was. Free Chol Soo Lee is a difficult watch. As the film unfolds, we learn that Lee had a very tough life, both before, during, and after incarceration. The story begins with how Lee was born in Seoul, South Korea, but then immigrated to San Francisco, California to be with his mother. Not fluent in English, Lee was even committed to a mental institution after being sent to juvenile hall for lashing out in school due to not being able to express himself in this unfamiliar environment. However, as he grew into adulthood, Lee continued to struggle, having few friends and seemingly lost in life. He would often be on the streets and avoided being at home. However, things came to a head when he asked to borrow a gun from his boss at the nightclub he worked at. He had never seen one before, and it misfired in his apartment. This incident was reported by the police and would later lead the police to include Lee in a lineup for the Chinatown murder of Yip Yi Tak. Despite not being Chinese, and white witnesses claiming they saw Tak being gunned down by a Chinese man, Lee was arrested for the murder and sent to prison. While in prison, Lee killed a fellow inmate in self-defense, which landed him on death row. About 10 years would pass before the Pan-Asian American social movement triggered by the injustice of his incarceration would get Lee out and back in society. Unfortunately, this victory and happiness wouldn't last. With little working skills and under huge pressure by the Free Chol Soo Lee movement to be a perfect icon, Lee fell back into gang activity and drug addiction and was subsequently arrested again, disappointing many who had spent years to get him out. After committing arson in 1991 as part of his gang activity, Lee even suffered third-degree burns that covered 90% of his body and disfigured him permanently. A tortured soul, Lee would eventually die of complications from a gastric disorder at age 62, refusing life-saving surgery in favor of passing away early. As an Asian American watching Chol Soo Lee's story, I had complicated feelings. At first, it was difficult to accept and understand a man who fought so hard to be exonerated, only to land back in prison a few years later. I think when we think of heroes and heads of social movements, we want and have an expectation that that person will have a perfect and flawless character. However, that wasn't Chol Soo Lee. Perhaps it's due to the model minority stereotype, and maybe it's due to how minorities need to have immaculate reputations to be acknowledged and accepted by greater American society. But all those biases don't hide the fact that at the end of the day, Lee was still wrongfully put in prison and suffered needlessly. Lee's story teaches us that a person doesn't need to be perfect to deserve our compassion and forgiveness. Finally, when watching Free Chol Soo Lee, I couldn't help but compare the documentary with yet another prominent documentary about an Asian American man treated wrongly by the system, the 1987 classic, Who Killed Vincent Chin? Centering around the hate crime which led Ronald Ebens and his stepson laid-off auto worker Michael Nitz to beat Chinese-American Vincent Chin to death with a baseball bat due to hostility against the Japanese for the decline in the American automotive industry. I know I'm not the only one making these connections, considering Chen was also mentioned by the directors Ha and Yi during the Q&A for Free Chol Soo Lee. However, while both cases center around misidentifying Asian men and the terrible consequences that followed, ultimately the Chol Soo Lee and Vincent Chin stories are about very different things. Who Killed Vincent Chin condemns a violent hate crime in which the perpetrators were able to walk away merely with a 3-month probation and a $3,000 fine. However, Free Chol Soo Lee is an indictment on the U.S. justice system and how it leaves people behind, so they're wholly unequipped and unable to enter society. When I finished watching Who Killed Vincent Chin, I was left with a palpable anger. With Free Chol Soo Lee, all I felt was sadness. Sadness that the system failed Lee, and sadness for a man whose life was difficult from beginning to the very end, who was not granted humanity even after becoming a symbol of hope and justice. The tragic slaying of Chen meant that he never had to deal with the aftermath of being made into a symbol. However, Lee's story demonstrates how unfair and harmful it was to foist those expectations on someone who was already physically and mentally damaged by serving a prison sentence. Both Lee and Chen's are important stories to tell and learn from, and are well worth a watch. Free Chol Soo Lee is currently in select theaters with a nationwide theater release on August 17th. For information on when and where Chol Soo Lee is coming to your city, visit the film's page on Mubi. If you like this and want to see more, check out and subscribe to the Enstarz YouTube channel. This has been Jess. See you next time.